Hey everybody, it's Joe Trippi and welcome back to That Trippi Show. We've got another primary this weekend, folks. We probably know Trump's going to win it, but some numbers, I think, show he's even weaker than is being reported. You know, I've felt that all along. Alex, I don't know about you, but it's starting to look like MAGA's Biden impeachment attempt, gasp, was even flimsier than we thought.
Flimsier than we thought?
Flimsier than we thought. And after a couple of guest episodes, we've gotten some really good listener questions. I want to make sure we hit those today. Before we get into it, first of all, the feedback we've gotten so far on Bill Carter's episode talking about Kiss the Future has been incredible. Many of our listeners have watched and written in saying how amazing the experience was when they actually went to the movie after hearing that podcast that we dropped on Tuesday. It is out for wider release now, so go check it out. We'll put it in the show notes. And if you haven't listened to that podcast that we dropped on Tuesday with Bill Carter about Kiss the Future, it's powerful. It really hits the spot. And again, the movie is worth seeing. Alex, where should we get started?
I think we got to go to South Carolina, Joe, a state you and I know very well. But Nikki Haley's home state primary this weekend. We can get into what we think is going to happen. But ahead of South Carolina, the January fundraising numbers for the presidential candidates came out. And Trump, the presumptive nominee, former president, that's worth billions and billions of dollars, got outraised by Nikki Haley, which I need to read that to myself a couple more times to believe it. But here we are. Joe, what does it all mean?
It's like, look, well, we've talked about this, and, you know, Simon Rosenberg brought this up too. There's now a hard money problem developing in the Republican Party because they've sort of become so dependent of billionaire oligarchs, you know, who fund the dark money and the super PACs, that they're, you know, the traditional, you know, even the $25 people and the, you know, and the maxed out folks, $3,300 in a campaign under the FEC rules, they haven't really developed that, or they've sucked in so many of them into paying for Trump's legal bills that it's actually those two things combined, the you know, sort of the dependence on the billionaires to fund things. And at the same time, I think the money's just drying up for Trump. I mean, so you look, he only raised $13.8 million, and he spent more than he raised. And, you know, we won't even get into how much been siphoned off for the legal bills that we just, you know, been talking about.
It's not a majority, but it's the single biggest expense.
Yeah. And anyway, and so you look at that, and then you see that Nikki Haley outraised him by $3 million. And, you know, look, they can complain, they can say, oh, that was Democrat, you know, money from Democrats, whatever. I mean, I'm sure some of it is, but a hell of a lot of it is, you know, Republican business money and others that want, you know, that have decided they don't want Trump. And by the way, Trump's not getting that money. In fact, I think it was Tim Scott who said after the New Hampshire primary that they now hoped that maybe that sort of the Republican money that was sitting on the sidelines would that they've been waiting for. They wanted it. It didn't come in Iowa, didn't come after New Hampshire, and it's not coming now. So look, they're going to have a problem in November. You know, Biden, by the way, is kind of breaking records.
2 million in January. I think he's, we'll get to that. The one thing, and I don't want to read too far. I think you're right in terms of it is showing just another crack. But, you know, if you've got 14 million and you're up 30 points on the person that has 17 million, I feel pretty good that 3 million ain't going to flip a state this quickly, especially if you're Trump and the electorate is as set in stone for him as it looks to be. But if you're the presumptive nominee and you are not able to command a significant amount of your party's big money, you are in serious, serious trouble.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. But the other part of that is, you know, Nikki Haley's raising more than him. The more she stays in the race, look at all the money he's had to spend in Iowa, New Hampshire, and now South Carolina. and he'll have to spend on Super Tuesday, even if she's running on fumes. He still has a primary challenge. He's not hoarding and spend money in a general election against Joe Biden.
He's actually depleting.
He's depleting it for because he's in this, because the primaries are going longer than he thought. The money's not coming in as fast as they wanted. And the money that is coming in is being diverted to pay for his legal fees. And that's just going to increase as well. So, no, by any stretch, we can get into the Biden numbers, but it's like, Biden raised this much this quarter. Trump raised that much this quarter. That's all fine. Biden is actually banking it or using it, on the NATO ads and other ads that are working right now to do damage to Trump or to make the case, to make the contrast, while Trump is spending his money on legal bills and in a fight, to call Nikki Haley's husband out and other things that he's doing. He does that, in his talks, but he's also spending that kind of money just attacking the living daylights out of her in South Carolina right now because he wants, the thing still gets to, okay, and I've said this, if Joe Biden had somebody who was still in the race against him right now and went into South Carolina and was only beating that person 60-35, the National Press Corps would be declaring, that he's dead man walking. I mean, they do it anyway. But I'm saying if there was if Dean Phillips, anybody was at 35%
closer to 35
in a primary
votes in South Carolina, by the way.
Yeah, but my point is, that's what I'm saying. He's like under 3 points. That's my point is, this is just get into it. But this is why I say he's weaker than people realize. I mean, his money's not there. And when you look at it, the fact that she's even at 35% in South Carolina is a problem for him. It shows he's a weak front runner. He's a weak nominee. And a lot of those people, again, remember in Iowa, New Hampshire, and I'm sure in South Carolina, will be telling the exit pollsters that when they voted for her, many of them decided that they won't be voting for Trump in the general. Remember in I think one of those states, it was like 57% of her vote saying that they would not be considering Trump in November. Now, maybe they'll stay home, but he needs them all.
So I want to get to South Carolina more in general, but I do want to just point out overall cash on hand right now. The two committees that are Trump aligned have 36.6 million on hand. Joe Biden's at 132. And he raised
42 million in just this 42 million in this month. He raised more this month than Trump has on hand in two committees.
Well,
I mean that and like I said, he's spending it right now in South Carolina, some of that, and he'll probably have to spend some of it on Super Tuesday. Even because there's no signs that Nikki Haley intends to get out just because, he wallops her in South Carolina, particularly if the money's still coming in.
Right. Well, and this happened in between our last guest episode or since we last had a chance to talk about the race. The state of New York handed Trump something like 355 million more reasons to worry. Those big donors are they are just paying his legal bills at this point.
Well, 355 million. That won't just be legal bills. I mean, it's going to be
right. Well,
it's going to take whole buildings, or maybe one of the billionaires will just write him a 355. I don't know. Maybe the Saudis. I mean, they get it to him through Kushner, who then, I don't know, but he doesn't have that cash, so
right.
He's going to have to get it from somewhere.
And so this is one of my favorite hypothetical questions in a long time from a listener, and it's from Dana in Long Beach. If Trump stopped spending money right now, would he still win the primary? Like $0. Like literally stop spending money right now. Would he still win the Republican primary?
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, the reason he's spending this money, I think, is because they know how bad it could be. In other words, what I mean is, okay, there's a difference between 62-35 and like, let's say 57-43, right? And that's what he's spending. He's spending the money to make sure that it never got there. Because if South Carolina on Saturday, if it's something like 57-43, 56-44, that I think even the national press would start to say, hey, he's weak. There's something going on here. And
Here's
so
why
they've
that's bad news
basically
for
been
Joe Biden.
flooding the
Sorry.
zone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Right. But what I'm saying is, so he's spending gobs of money to build as big a margin as he possibly can. That's what the money advantage is doing for him. But if he didn't spend anything, I mean, to answer Dana's question, if he didn't spend anything, then the odds are that those numbers would creep a little closer and too close for comfort in terms of how it could how it could expose the bigger problem that I'm sure his own people know is there. And so, one, there's sort of two pieces of this. Look, Trump, unlike any other candidate, because of how the press covers every freaking outrageous thing he says with sort of treating him like a mainstream candidate in their coverage and how they report it, he can't, and his ability to just drive that agenda, doesn't need any money to make his case. And with his hold within the Republican Party, he probably doesn't need any money to win the Republican nomination. On the other hand, his whole theory of being is his invincibility and how he has a godlike hold over the Republican Party. And so he needs money to keep that facade up. And that's what they've been doing. But he also needs money, to raise money for his legal bills. And what they spend most of their time doing is saying, please send me money to help my campaign. And then they figure a way to get to use it to pay the legal bills. So it's not clear how much of this money is actually being spent on anything other than campaign ads attacking Nikki Haley viciously and her husband viciously and legal bills.
Well, and to take our listeners into a campaign, basically any campaign other than Trump's, when you're going and like you're sending a staffer out to go do something, whether it's film something or do advance or whatever, generally speaking, you are doing it as cheaply as humanly possible. It's like, okay, do you have to pay for a rental car? Can you borrow one? Can you sleep at a friend's house? Like, no, you're not expensing your meals. Like, literally just the list. It strikes me that the Trump campaign is not ever going to be able to be that kind of lean, mean machine that most campaigns are. They are going to be spending $600 on hotel rooms and crazy flights.
I think more than that.
True.
More than that. Yeah,
True.
that's who they are. There's no one doing that there. I think the basic, there's only two reasons anybody works for them, right?
The money, right.
And and geez, maybe I could be an aide to a dictator and that'd be cool. I mean, that's it.
I want to say that Melania's hairdresser was paid like 200 and something thousand from the campaign since start. It's like, so you're wondering why everyone's with it. So yeah, in answer to Dana, her question, I bet
that's why no one wants to give him any money. I mean, who wants to pay for the hairdresser or the lawyer? I mean, now look, I think that's worked on, the MAGA, base, who could, buy the hats, give $25,
the sneakers,
but yeah, and, the gold sneakers. I think they're getting to a point where they can't, that on its own can't sustain the kind of campaign they run, the kind of legal expenses he has, any of that. And so that's why always they've been living off of that, but they've always wanted the big Republican money to wade in. And to date, I mean, you don't raise 13.8 million if you're the former president of the United States. I mean, I remember, Bill Clinton broke the all-time record for a Democrat, in a quarter And he did it not in his first campaign. He did it running against Bob Dole in his reelection campaign. The next time that was broken was in the campaign I ran, the Dean campaign. And, we were, an insurgent candidacy, and we broke, the record of that Clinton had set. And here you've got the same kind of weird thing where the former president of the United States, Trump, is like hitting an abysmal amount of money, and Nikki Haley, the insurgent, in the challenger in this thing right now, just outraised him. I mean, I think that's definitely the first time that's ever happened since Trump's came down that escalator. And yet, of course, that's a problem for Joe Biden somehow. That's how the headline in the New York Times will be, I'm sure.
Joe, not that I wasn't listening completely raptly to what you were just saying, but I did go on the Trump sneaker website while you were talking, and I found out, for what it's worth, they are selling Victory 47 cologne as well. The sneakers are sold out, but you can actually buy Trump cologne, which is absolutely, it comes in a decanter that has his head on it.
Yeah, but here's the weird thing about all this stuff, right? Okay, so yes, you're supposedly making a campaign contribution, correct? Or am I wrong about that?
No, this is not affiliated with any political campaign, according to their...
Right. And ergo, who is the manufacturer? Who's the middleman?
Right.
You give 50, it's not right. It's not his campaign. By the way, whoever the sneaker company in China is going to get their $5.89 for the gold sneakers, but somebody's pocketing the other, and I'm sure it'd be interesting, but I'm sure it's a great business opportunity for somebody who needs to pay his legal bills.
Well, it was an entertaining browse. I would not encourage anyone to go to the website.
Yeah, well, while I was talking, you were okay. I got it. It just tells me something.
All right, Joe, got another great listener question for you. This is from Steven in Florida, relevant for this week. Joe, make a prediction. Who's at the front of the GOP Veep stakes right now? Trump mentioned he'd, quote, make a big play for New York, unquote, but that's all bullshit, right? And Steven, your words, not mine, but I happen to co-sign them. I've got my money on Stefanik. No chance it's Haley. Joe, what do you think?
I'd put my money on Stefanik too. I mean, she definitely wants
She's trying.
She's trying hard, but I'm not sure Trump, he's going to go for somebody like Noam from South Dakota. I just think he's drawn to somebody he finds hot, and I'm not sure that's not fair. It's not fair, but that's how he makes decisions. So but I still think in the end, Stefanik may be the choice he goes with. There's no chance it's Haley. Stephen's right about that. That's what he said, and I agree with you, Stephen. There's no chance at all. One, I don't think look, I think there's a lot of speculation. Hey, what's she really going to do, when this all doesn't work out? And, I don't think she'll leave the Republican Party. People think, oh, maybe she could run as a third independent. I don't think she'll do that, because I think most of the polling will show that she can't win a three-way, that she doesn't take enough votes away from either Trump or Biden. And therefore, it's a suicide mission. And all she has done is literally burn the ships. She's Cortez, burning the ships with no way back to her party if she does that. And I don't think that's how she thinks. She'll probably, bow out later on here, not run with him, because I think she realizes that would be a disaster long term.
Well, at this point, she's got her eye on 28 too.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I think she'll bow out nicely, stay, a Republican, and try to be in position in 2028. I don't think she thinks the way to be in position in 2028 would be to be Donald Trump's VP nominee.
Does she even endorse it
in this November? Well, that's going to be the interesting thing. I think it'll be some halfway hazy. It won't
like a Ted Cruz situation. Well, he's all in, but he went after his wife.
No, it won't be all in. Yeah, no, it won't be. It'll be, it's a tough and difficult choice, but he's much better than, the president we have or some crap like that. It's like she'll answer it the way they all answer, is Joe Biden president of the United States? Of course he's president. Was he duly elected? I said he's president. They'll do that. She'll do that kind of thing.
Okay, here's one from Stan. This is actually an international question. So this is from Stan in Poland, and I think I know why he's asking this. He asks, why is the Western media almost universally insisting that Alexei Navalny, quote, died in prison, unquote? They just need to come out and say it. Putin murdered him. This was no Markov on the Waterloo Bridge, but it was murder just as much.
Absolutely. First of all, watch Navalny's video. The courage he had, he knew he was going to die. He recorded that video knowing he was going to die. But his point was, you're not allowed to give up, which is, again, the one thing, I keep seeing, like the New York Times headline, I'll get off this for a second, but the New York Times headline that said progressives are exhausted by by Trump and are giving up bullshit. First of all, that story's bullshit. But yeah, Navalny had it. Autocrats count on exhausting their opposition. They count on it. It's how democracy dies. That is why it can happen here. And you can't give up. And I think, but Navalny knew that in speaking out, he was, going to be murdered. He knew he was going to die. And that's why I think it's very important that the press make that clear. But of course, it's just not going to happen. I mean, part of it is the normalcy bias. They're still, I think, the press corps and far too many Americans are still in the "it can't happen here" mode.
I have some news for them. I really liked Reed's Substack. Yeah. We can link to it.
Yeah, it was great. We could put link to that in our show notes for sure.
His point was, okay, that don't give up, or then you're not allowed to give up. His point was do not take inspiration from that. More like it's an admonishment, right? Like, don't be wishy-washy about what you have here. And I think that the money line Reed had was, now is the time for all of us to ask whether or not we have the talent or the money or the experience in this fight. The question we must ask ourselves is if we have the will to pursue it to its end, which, your point, Joe, they really count on our exhaustion, and now is definitely not the time to be exhausted.
Yeah, that's, I mean, this is a guy who knew he was expending his life to really challenge authority, and here we don't have to do that. We just need to all in to save American democracy right now. No one's has to die to do that. We have to use our experience, use our talents, and every ounce of our energy to do what you can, whether it's, knocking on doors, whether it's giving money, whether it's, just about anything. And it means to stop being wishy-washy about Biden and get moving. And these are all things that Reed was preaching, and he said, if you think you've done all you can or should in this fight, you're wrong. He's right. If you think you've sacrificed all you have for American democracy, you haven't. I haven't. Alex hasn't. If you being offended by a troll or a bot is too much for you, I respectfully ask that you read the myriad stories about what Alexei Navalny represented and what he endured. Mean tweets don't make the list. And that I really, I think this piece by Reed is just maybe I'm guilty of this too. I say this is a must read or this is a must listen podcast.
To be fair, there's a lot of good ones, but this one is pretty good.
But this one is pretty good. You really should. We'll put it in the show notes. People should try to take time to read it.
I do want to just take a moment.
It's actually pretty inspiring too.
Yeah. I do want to just take a moment, Joe. You mentioned at the top, but while we are talking about the R word, it is the other thing that happened this week.
Yeah, the informant.
The informant.
Yes.
Turns out he was lying the whole time and is under investigation for lying to the FBI.
The Republicans knew he was lying.
Knew. Whether or
Yeah.
not James Comer is ever going to be able to hold another job again, I think he probably will. I don't think he's going anywhere. But the other one I
He
wanted to
needs
get
to
to,
resign.
he's not going to resign. He has no shame. But the one that got me, Joe, the informant had contacts with Russian intelligence.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is the whole thing. All the garbage that he was spewing. No, and he was still trying to introduce more lies now. I mean, that's, it's not that the whole that they kept saying, very, very important informant has provided, real evidence. And the fact they were saying that this was the smoking gun, the most important piece of evidence they had was this informant, and all of it was just crap and an out and out lie that had been fed to him by Russia intelligence, and now it turns out that the way he basically was doing the same thing now. I mean, like in real time in this election. So yeah, there's a bunch of Republicans, Jim Jordan, Comer, all running around saying it doesn't matter. The facts are still the facts. I look. There's some of the journalists have actually really pushed hard on this. What do you mean the facts are still the facts? They're not facts; they're lies. And so But look, they still claim that they're going to go on with impeachment, even though everything has fallen apart on them. Everything that fell apart. They said not to worry. We have this informant. That's the most important thing. And now they don't have the informant, and he's working for Russian as a contact with Russian intelligence to spew lies that they knew or should have had real big questions about, but kept repeating it as truth and fact. And now they just say, well, it hasn't changed the facts when the facts they claim are facts are lies. So none of this. I mean, look, this is a party that's been pushing the big lie now. Donald Trump's still the duly elected president, and there were big, 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 big problems in the 2020 election, friends, if you buy any of this.
Right. All right, Joe, we got time for one more thing. Any pieces of data or polling you found interesting this week?
Not a specific poll, but you got to check out Greg Sargent's new podcast, The Daily Blast. He had Tom Swazi's pollster on, and they got into some really interesting takeaways that I think everybody should listen to, especially that even though Joe Biden's approval was barely 40% in New York 3, Swazi won a sizable amount of Republicans, almost 50% of independents. Abortion and immigration were winning arguments,
which
we know. But seeing how many GOP voters flip because of those issues is a really clear path for us to take the House later this year. And by the way, Alabama now, saying that frozen embryos are and stopping families
IVF,
from being able to have IVF from having children. I mean, from being able to, they're having trouble, and they want a child, and they've now, effectively that's all shut down. That can't. I mean, with what we saw in New York 3 and how we know the abortion issue has played since Dobbs, this ruling, I mean, by the Alabama Supreme Court, it just shows the extreme and the not just the extremism of the MAGA movement, but also what happens when they feel like they've got power. I mean, hey, we can push this stuff through, and we can. In other words, the election mattered. Trump won. He appointed judges. Alabama is a one-party state. They appoint conservative, crazy right in terms of how extreme they are judges. And what happens? We're not talking about just, a 6-week ban or any of that stuff. They will try to do the national ban. That's going to be a problem, I think, in November. But now they don't even want, they're banning. I think just you look at the numbers on this that I've seen since that ruling. I mean, a large share of pro-life Republicans believe that that there shouldn't be a ban. You shouldn't create this ban. What will eventually, I mean, because already the biggest hospital, I think, in Alabama said they're not going to do IDF because they can't risk what will happen to their doctors or their patients in terms of the law. So that is like just again, just another grade of real, another step further of really cruelty and not getting where the American public is, even where their own pro-life stalwarts are. It doesn't make sense. They're going to pay a penalty for that. The other thing, though, and I think which, if you can find it, Arnon Minshkin, who's runs the decision desk at Fox News. And let me tell you, folks, I've been on the decision desk at NBC, CBS, Fox, and CNN. And you can think all you want about the network at Fox, but their decision desk is by far that Arnon runs is by far the best in the business. And again, you remember the whole blow up when they actually called Arizona for Biden. So I mean, to give you, and a lot of them went out the window when that happened. But Arnon wrote a piece that, if we can dig it up, I think put it in the show notes, but I can at least get into what he said in it, because some of you won't want to go to that site, and I get that. So I read it so that you wouldn't have to go there. And in it, it's really interesting. He posits that everybody's reading these polls wrong, which is something Alex and I have talked about, Simon's talked about, that everything that is being interpreted by the press and pollsters and pundits out there is wrong about how you should look at the numbers. That he consistently sees Trump kind of locked in the 45, 46, maybe 47%, and that Biden's bumping all over the place. And he posits that there's a reason for that. That, yes, Trump is getting that mid 40 number, but that 53% of Americans have no intention of voting for Trump. None. They are dead set against voting for Trump. You give him 47, that other 53 isn't going to vote for him, will not vote for him. And the reason Biden's numbers bump up and down is because that's his pool. His entire pool available to him is that 53%. And so, are people concerned about his age? Yes. Are all these things, the economy, no matter whether it doesn't matter that it's great if they aren't feeling it, all those things do matter. And so when, push comes to shove, it's why we've talked about, look, if this is a head-to-head race between Trump and Biden, that's how he got the 51% over Trump's 46.7 in 2020. And therefore, when push comes to shove, as much as those people, they're sure they're not voting for Trump, they don't. Some of them, yes. A lot of them can't think, right now can't really fathom the idea of voting for Joe Biden. But in 2020, they did. In 2022, they were the people who stayed on against MAGA and stopped the red wave, by enough of them deciding to do that. And so therefore, when you look at this positive, sort of this, the way he sees the race, it's very similar to the way I see it. And that therefore it's the third parties, because the pool, as long as that pool of 53% is available to Biden, and he's not, there's no way, there's no Robert Kennedy pulling Kennedy nostalgia, RFK Jr., or Cornel West or Jill Stein pulling voters away, then that whole pool of 53 is available to Biden. Many will be voting for Biden. A lot of them will be voting against Trump. But 53% of the country doesn't want to vote for Trump. And that's why it's a real, the Biden campaign has to run its effort. And people need to start to understand that any support for a third party is just a vote for Donald Trump. Third parties equal Trump. That's something that Alex and I have been working on with others at Citizens to Save Our Republic. But it's interesting. That piece by Arnon Mishkin at Fox News is really interesting. It really kind of, particularly from him, who I respect so much for how he reads polls, it made a lot of sense to me and connected a lot of the dots that I've been trying to talk about in past podcasts on the subject.
Joe, I think that's a great place to end.
Thanks, Alex. And thanks everyone for listening to That Trippi Show. This podcast is free because of support from our advertisers, and it's part of the Resolute Square. So check out the latest at resolutesquare.com/Trippi. Please subscribe to That Trippi Show. Leave a review on Apple or wherever you listen. You can always send us a question to thattrippishow@gmail.com or leave us a question in a review on iTunes. We'll see you next week. Thanks for listening.
Resolute Square.